All right, let's jump right into this explainer by setting our strategic map back to the incredibly tense year of 1962. We're going to focus right here on the Himalayas. We are looking at the exact moment where the Chinese People's Liberation Army has advanced in this massive, sweeping maneuver. They've pushed all the way to just 50 kilometers from the Indian border town of Tezpur, right near the Assam Northeast Frontier Agency border.
And the sheer localized panic in this moment is just stunning. Imagine the atmosphere in Tezpur right then. The local government is ordering a full-scale evacuation of civilians to the south of the Brahmaputra River. And it gets even more extreme. Local authorities literally threw open the prison doors, releasing all the inmates. As for the government officials who bravely stayed behind, they deliberately destroyed Tezpur's entire currency reserves, just anticipating a Chinese advance. It's a striking picture of a frontier on the absolute brink. But as we pull back our view from the Himalayan battlefield to a much broader global map, we really have to ask ourselves a critical question. Why does a regional border war affect global politics so dramatically? I mean, how does a clash over high-altitude territory ripple out to capitals thousands of miles away? Well, to understand how a single frontier clash reshaped global alliances practically overnight, we need to take a look at the geopolitical chessboard of the time.
Section 1. Setting the Cold War Board. Looking at the board here, we can see how this tension builds across the four major players of the era. You've got the United States firmly committed to containment, the USSR navigating its own internal communist bloc fractures, a very assertive China, and, of course, a proudly non-aligned India. All four of these massive geopolitical forces were perfectly positioned to be drawn directly into this Himalayan vortex. Each nation viewed this isolated border war not just as a territorial dispute, but through the highly magnified lens of Cold War survival. Section 2. The Western Intervention. Panning over to the west, we find the United States and the United Kingdom rushing to interpret China's motives. The Kennedy administration was deeply, deeply disturbed by what they termed blatant Chinese communist aggression against India. They didn't view this as just some localized argument over map coordinates. No, in the eyes of Western nations, China was the aggressor in a conflict that was actually part of a monolithic communist objective, aiming for a world dictatorship. This fear is brilliantly illustrated by a truly chilling quote from Mao Zedong. The way to world conquest lies through Havana, Accra, and Calcutta. So for Washington, the Himalayas were literally the newest front line of global conquest. So the really crucial point here is how rapidly the West escalated their involvement. On November 20th, seeing the disintegration of his own armies, India's Prime Minister Nehru makes a desperate appeal to the US for armed aid. He specifically asks for airstrikes if the Chinese advanced further and air cover against potential Chinese bomber raids on Indian towns. And the response? It was massive. The U.S. Navy immediately ordered an aircraft carrier to the Bay of Bengal. Within a single day, the UK and USA arranged an immediate airlift, flooding Kolkata with arms, transport planes, and munitions. And, importantly, they demanded zero changes to India's non-alignment policy in return. The stakes were viewed as being so high that U.S. Defense Secretary Robert McNamara and General Maxwell Taylor actually advised President Kennedy to use nuclear weapons if the Americans had to intervene directly. Section 3. The Neutrality Disappointment. Tracing our pencil lines down to the non-aligned nations, the very bloc India itself championed, the story takes a deeply ironic and frankly frustrating turn for New Delhi. India fully expected staunch support from its non-aligned peers, but instead, they received deafening neutrality. While the United Arab Republic openly supported India, a coalition meeting in Colombo that included Egypt, Burma, Cambodia, Sri Lanka, Ghana, and Indonesia offered what became known as the Colombo Proposals. And these proposals offered a starkly unbalanced solution. They suggested a Chinese withdrawal of 20 kilometers, but without any reciprocal withdrawal on India's behalf. Even more critically, these 6 nations utterly failed to unequivocally condemn Beijing as the aggressor. For India, this lack of solidarity from its closest diplomatic allies was just a profound disappointment. Section 4. The Pakistan-China Pivot. Okay, let's shift our focus to India's neighbor, Pakistan. Pakistan had already experienced a pretty turbulent relationship with India since partition. Earlier on, they had actually proposed a common defense to India against northern enemies like China, a proposal India rejected. Now, watching the 1962 war unfold, Pakistan's External Affairs Minister Muhammad Ali declared the massive influx of Western arms into India as an unfriendly act, fearing those weapons would eventually threaten Pakistan's own security. Pakistan capitalized on this geopolitical distraction with, honestly, masterful opportunism. Right as the war kicks off in October 1962, Pakistan and China peacefully begin negotiating their shared, previously disputed boundaries. By December, the talks conclude, and by March 1963, they sign the China-Pakistan Border Treaty, establishing new commercial and trade ties. Pakistan essentially used the war to concede its northern claim line in Pakistani-controlled Kashmir in favor of a more southerly boundary along the Karakoram Range. This forged a lasting strategic closeness with China and, as we know, eventually triggered the Second Kashmir War. Section 5. The Soviet Calculation. Panning north to the Soviet Union, their reaction is totally fascinating because it reveals the deep, widening cracks of the Sino-Soviet split playing out in real time. The number 12 is absolutely key here. Just before the Cuban Missile Crisis in August 1962, Moscow agreed to sell 12 advanced MiG-21 warplanes to India, complete with the technical assistance to manufacture them locally. This was a massive deal, right? Especially since the US and UK had completely refused to provide India with such advanced weaponry. But think about the timing for a second. This intended production of sophisticated aircraft deeply incensed Peking, especially coming right after Soviet technicians had just been withdrawn from China. Moscow was deliberately and publicly choosing to arm China's immediate adversary. However, we really have to notice the calculated reality here. While the West was rushing in airlifts and aircraft carriers, absolutely zero Soviet assistance was given to India during the traumatic days of the actual fighting in 1962. Moscow was playing the long game. While they stayed out of the active combat phase, they stepped right in afterward, offering loans, low prices, and technical help to slowly pull India into its orbit. And you know what? This strategy worked. By 1964, despite the total lack of wartime help, India had become a major purchaser of Soviet arms. Section 6. A New Asian Balance. Zooming all the way back out to our global map, the pencil strokes now reveal a completely reshaped geopolitical landscape. What started as a localized push towards Tezpur essentially rearranged the diplomatic foundations of the globe. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this stark reality of the 1962 conflict. International politics follows interests far more than it follows emotions. India learned the very hard limits of non-aligned solidarity. Pakistan seized an opportunity to permanently alter its strategic depth with China. The US and UK rushed in to halt perceived global communist expansion. And the USSR, well, they pragmatically wedged themselves into the Asian arms market without firing a single shot. It really prompts us to look at the map today and ask, how will the next localized crisis instantly rewrite the map of global alliances?